Hi, Mrs. Brannon. For today's video or tutorial, I'm going to be talking about significant figures, aka sig figs. So there are 4 rules to understanding how to do sig figs, and these are the 4 rules that you need to know. Rule number 1 is any number 1 through 9 is always significant, all non-zero numbers. An example would be 1,239. That means that there are 4 sig figs because every number in that number is any number from 1 through 9, as it says in the rule up above, 1 through 9. Now, rule number 2 is if a 0 is between 2 significant figures, that 0 is significant. An example of this would be 701. There are 3 significant figures because the 0 is between 2 significant figures, and that's what makes the 0 significant. Now, another example would be 7,001. So, because these 2 zeros are between 2 significant figures, that makes every number in 7,001 a significant figure. So that's why there are 4 significant figures in 7,001. Rule number 4 is zeros are not significant if they're used to locate a number. An example would be 0.00002. They're used to locate a number and trying to round it to make it 1. And so that's why the only significant figure is 2, because rule number 1 is any number 1 through 9 is significant, and that's why there's only 1 significant figure. Another example would be 20,000. 20,000 has so many zeros, and they aren't between any other significant figures, and they aren't after a decimal point. And that's why the only significant figure is the 2 because of rule number 1, which is any number 1 through 9 is significant. For rule number 3, if the 0 implies precision, it is significant. Any zeros after a decimal point or after a sig fig are significant. For example, 32.00. Because the 2 zeros are after the decimal point, they become significant. So 32, 3 and 2 are significant, and because the 2 zeros are after the decimal point, they're also significant. So 32.00 equals 4 sig figs. Another example is 0.320. The 0 before the decimal point isn't significant. So 320. 3 and 2 are significant because of rule number 1. And because in rule number 3, if a 0 is after the decimal point, it makes it significant. And that's why there are 3 significant figures. Now that you know your significant figure rules, now you need to know how to use them when you're multiplying, adding, subtracting, or dividing. So that's what I'm going to teach you next. Now, in order to add or subtract and get the right amount of sig figs, you must follow the rule. The rule is always write your answer using the least precise measurement, which means with the number you are adding with, you need to figure out how many sig figs are in the least amount of digits after the decimal point from the numbers you are adding by. So as you can see from the example, 4.281 is bigger than 27.5 because it has 3 more numbers after the decimal point. So you're going to add and find your answer, and then you're going to figure out that 27.5 has less sig figs than 4.281. So your answer is going to be 31.8 because there's only 1 sig fig after the decimal, and that's the least amount of digits after the decimal point. Now, to multiply and divide, what you need to know is you always write your answer with the smallest, lowest, least number of sig figs. For example, 8.004 divided by 4.0. 8.004 has 4 significant figures, and 4.0 has 2 significant figures. And once you divide them, you find your answer to be 2.001. And you need to go back to what you were dividing by and figure out which number had the least amount of sig figs. And that's the amount of sig figs you're going to have for your final answer. So because 4.0 has the smallest amount of sig figs, your answer is going to have 2 sig figs as well, which is 2.0. Boom! There, I've taught you how to add and subtract, your rules for all the significant figures, and how to multiply and divide. So now I'm going to give you a couple questions to see if you understand anything I taught you and for some additional practice. So here we go. Now the first problem is 98.02 plus 5.0001. So when you're adding, the rule is you always have to see which number has the least amount of sig figs after the decimal. And after the decimal, the smallest amount of sig figs is 98.02. So what that means is that 103 has to have 2 sig figs after the decimal. So the answer would be 103.02. That would be right here. Now the next question, you're doing multiplication now. 1.1 times 4.43 equals 4.873. The rule applies the same way, but you look at the amount of sig figs in all. So the smallest amount of sig figs is 1.1. So when you transfer over to see what 4.873 is, your answer would be 4.8. 4.9 because you would round actually. 4.9. Now, thank you for watching. That's the way I taught you guys how to do sig figs. So thank you. Bye.